Hello and welcome to the 2020 FIA Gran Turismo Championships. We're back in action once again for the top 16 superstars for the Oceania region. I'm Tom Brooks. Alongside me, Lord Sheddington himself, Jimmy Broadbent, who is looking more aerodynamic this week than he has done for a very long time.
And my top speed's way up, man. Well, I'm well fast.
Drag coefficient's right there. God, yeah. Well, we've got Nations Cup and Manufacturer Series action to come for you as ever for round 28 of Stage 3. I can't believe it's like, it seems like yesterday we were just starting the World Tour back in Sydney. Now we're talking about the online season and we're coming to the end of Stage 3. It's just like it's flown by this year, isn't it?
Yeah, time has sort of got away from us a little bit this year for various reasons, of course, but doesn't mean we haven't seen some awesome racing along the way. Still a little bit more to come, and it's getting a bit spicy now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. And the man who has been on top and dominant in pretty much everything, especially in terms of the Nations Cup, Cody Lukovsky, can he be beaten? That's the question.
Cody the Podium, as we called him, because he used to second and third was pretty much everywhere he was. This is his chance now to really cement his status as the driver to beat in that region, whilst first maybe a little bit unattainable for some people. Second and third still very much up for grabs.
Yeah, absolutely right. Matt McHugh and Emily Jones very much interlocked in a little battle, and Emily Jones has been really coming on song lately, so keen to see what she can do. So the drivers lined up on the grid ahead of the Oceania Top 16 Superstars race for the Nations Cup. You can see the Group 3 machines ready for our drivers. Cody Nikola Lukovsky for Chevrolet lines up on pole position. Alongside him is Andrew Lee in the Toyota Supra. Second row of the grid, that's headed by Emily Jones. Again, it's been very competitive as of late in the top 16 superstars. Can she convert that into a strong result? Well, she'll have Dylan Lindgren hot on her heels in the McLaren 650S. P5 lines up Matt Simmons at the head of row 3. Then comes Cy Bishop in the second of the Toyotas lining up on the grid here. Bradley lines up P7, again in a Supra, very popular car as it's turning out for our competitors here. Gooms in the Aston Martin V12 Vantage, very loud machine. Nicolas Voon also lining up in P9 in the same machine as well. Completing the top 10 is Gopi Mahindajit. As we look further outside of the top 10, we can see in 11th place is Jonathan Stankowski. P12 is Paul Kander. Looking a little bit further back on the grid, P13 is Edwards. Very distinctive white and light blue livery on the car there, with Knowles lining up in P14. And then the final row of the grid is Palmer in 15th position, and then completing our 16-driver strong grid is William Fowles in the Supra. So that's how the grid lines up here, Jimmy. We can see a vast majority of the competitors starting on the medium tyres inside the top 10. What do we reckon for this race then? 20 laps, it's going to be interesting.
Seems about right, doesn't it? I'm interested to see that the majority of people are either on the, or with the Aston Martin, or with Toyota Supra, and then you've Cody out front in the Corvette saying, well, screw you guys, I know better. So, but yeah, I mean, standard affair already, top lot going for the fast start, as we tend to see. I'd be interested to see the differences between the Corvette and the Aston/Supra as the time goes on as well, and what that Corvette can do. Not really a car we usually see in these Nations Cup races, especially in Group 3, so yeah, we'll see how it performs.
Especially at the front of the field as well. So, Cody Lukovsky will lead the field over the timing line, the Dragon Trail Seaside circuit, the number 2 layout, so in reverse essentially. You can see 2 times fuel consumption, 7 times tyre wear, and 2 tyre compounds of the hard and medium tyres for the drivers to use. They must use each compound of tyre in the race. Round 28 of the top 16 superstars for the Oceania region here at the Dragon Trail Seaside circuit then is underway as Cody Lukovsky leads the field over the timing line. All the drivers darting into the slipstream as they head in towards the heavy braking zone of the first corner, going downhill into that left-hander. Nobody making any bold moves in the opening couple of corners, as you would begin to expect. Drivers just getting a bit of heat into their tyres and just trying to get their bearings, but as they get that heat to their tyres, you can see that elevated by the drivers weaving, with Cody Lukovsky there also grinding the wall. But as that happens over the course of this first lap, you should expect drivers to get a little bit more feisty with one another. But Cody Lukovsky doing a good job here of just pulling out a little bit of an advantage over Andrew Lee there in second.
Yeah, fast starting for Cody, of course, as he needs to be, although that Supra looks pretty quick. You see all the guys, and gals, I should say, coming out of the first corner, sliding, trying to get some heat into those tyres, a little bit of wiggling down the straight as well, just to get them nice and warm so they can attack this first lap. You need tyre temperature, especially for this first section here, this downhill, well, it is downhill in this version of the course, of course. S's, there's a lot of pressure on both of the outside and front tyres, so here is Lee now, getting onto the back of Lukowski. A bit slow down, yes, this is that Corvette. You have to think maybe it's a bit quicker in a straight line. Lee now looking at the inside for the lead of this race. Can he get it done? Cody sort of squeezes him to the inside as he can do as a leader. Lee has the inside line still, though, coming up into the first sector. Emily Jones looking to try and follow Lee through into the last sector here. Can Jones get it done too? She can, so Cody drops 2 places there.
Well, I wonder whether that's a case of the Corvette perhaps not being as strong on cold tyres, or whether Cody is just indeed struggling. You can see he continues to struggle. We ride on board here with Cody Lukowski, then, who is in second position as it comes back on screen, because Emily Jones has lost out, and he's got a penalty there, Cody, as well. We didn't see exactly what that was for, whether there was contact. Might be a result as to why Emily Jones has dropped down into P4. Now here comes Matthew Simmons, as well as Dylan Lindgren also picks up a penalty at the start of lap 2. So Lindgren through into third place, but with that penalty, you can see Matt Simmons there on the outside, Jones on the inside of him as they come side by side in towards the tunnel and then forwards into the chicane. So 2 penalties for these drivers. That's going to drop them out of contention as they come in towards that penalty zone later on in this lap. Through the chicane, a little bit wide there as well for Lukowski. He looks all at sea really in these opening stages. They're coming into the penalty zone now. That's going to eliminate 2 of the competitors from this quintet of drivers that are squabbling for position here.
Oh, bit of a contact there between Lindgren and Lukowski. I think Lukowski's connection isn't fantastic, it seems. It's starting to affect some of the cars around him as well. Here's Emily Jones and Matt Simmons going up the hill again. There have been 2 penalties handed out, so they'll move up into second and third respectively, but it's going to be a drag race to see who takes that second place going down to the S's. Simmons has the line. Jones probably won't be able to hold that around the outside. You know what? Oh, shut up. Emily can hold it around the outside. She makes the pass up into second place. Great move there from Jones, and then going a little bit wide, touching the grass. And this is that will slow her down, coming up to the next left-hander, sorry. Matt Simmons and Cy Bishop both looking up the inside to try and get up the inside of Emily Jones. Not quite able to do so. And Jones holds second place, and Matt Simmons now goes back into the clutches of Cy Bishop and Bradley as well behind. So everyone very, very feisty in these first stages.
Great scrapping between these drivers. All the while it's allowing Andrew Lee to pull out an advantage. 1.7 seconds it now sits at. So he's been able to clear off out in front. And as we ride on board here then with Bradley, Micah Bradley his name is, and perhaps a name that's not so familiar to you in the top 16 Superstars, one of the more recent additions to the championship, and great to have him here and great to see him fighting at the sharp end of the field. Here comes Simmons then versus Bishop, side by side down towards the first corner. Simmons on the inside, Bishop on the outside. Contact between the two, that's pushing Bishop out wide. It's allowing Bradley to come through up the inside as well of Matthew Simmons. He's through into fourth. Bishop goes into third as Matt Simmons demoted down into P5 as a result of that contact there. So it's all getting very interesting in these opening couple of stages. You can see though, the man in the background, the bright yellow Corvette of Cody Lukowski, he has now got an almighty recovery drive to try and get himself in contention at least for a podium in this race here.
I think these guys all collectively got out the wrong side of the bed today. Elbows out everywhere. Everyone's getting shoved wide. Contact left, right and centre. It's interesting for us as commentators, but of course if you're in there whilst driving, you're not going to be that happy about that sort of behaviour. But of course, penalties handed out if you are being a little bit too cheeky. We're on board now with Cody. Nice driver's eye view to go down the S's to see Simmons in front in the Supra. That Corvette not looking quite as comfortable through this section, it has to be said. Looking quite understeery compared to the cars in front. Although all the cars in this race are front engine rear wheel drive, so a lot of the weight at the front there, but the Corvette doesn't quite have the same change direction as the Supra does.
Yeah, running on board here with Cody Lukowski then through that left hand. You can just see in the background there Dylan Lindgren, another of the drivers who picked up a penalty along with Cody Lukowski a couple of laps ago, and these drivers now trying to damage limitate their race really more than anything as they try and fight their way back through the field. You can see Gooms there in the background in P8 as well. Bright green machine. The only driver who's on the harder compound of tyre, as you can see at the moment, is Jonathan Stankowski. Edwards, Mahindajit and Knowles have pitted. They started on the hard tyre. They're now on to the medium. So difference in strategies. Bradley trying to send it down the inside, as is Lukowski. Similarly on Matt Simmons. Side by side they go through the first corner. Lukowski on the inside. Simmons is going to get pushed wide to the outside. He's on the curb and he's now down into P6 as Lukowski makes his way through back into the top 5 once more here.
Yeah, it kind of feels like once the guy behind you forcibly opens the door, you lose ground to the guy behind as well. It's very, very much a freight train effect coming through here. And again, Cody looking all over the spot there. I think that's more connection than anything else, but he still dives up the inside of Bradley. That'll be fourth place back. Thank you very much. Up he goes. And Cody, slowly but surely, clawing his way back up to the front of the field where he expects to be after that awful start. Of course, a reminder, Cody did start on pole. But went down to 6th very early on with a contact penalty, we believe, with Emily Jones, who is currently in second place. So these guys fighting, don't need to be fighting this hard right now. We're on lap 4 out of 20. So a long way to go in this race, and pit stops and whatnot to take into account too. Meanwhile, front of the field, there is Emily Jones. A bit more of a subdued livery. Used to seeing a mint livery on those cars, which of course I agree with. I love the old mint liveries. But looking good position right now, a bit quicker than Lee in front. Could this be the time we see Jones win?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? We've seen Jones making her ascension through the field steadily over the last couple of races. You can see Simmons versus Bradley going side by side. Simmons now through into P5 as Bradley gets demoted down into 6th place. But yeah, it's good to see Jones fighting at the front end of the field, and consistently as well over the last couple of races. She's really come on song, has made a few mistakes so far in 2020, and again has just sort of really knocked herself out of contention more than anything, but seems to have righted those wrongs now, fighting at the sharp end of the field, putting in those consistent lap times, and along with Andrew Lee and Cy Bishop, it's a little bit of daylight between themselves and Cody Lukovsky there. I just want to talk about Cody here quickly, Jimmy, as well, because he's in 4th place. He is in the Corvette as well. Now, we know he's fighting at the sharp end of the championship as well. He's fighting for the overall win in the Oceania region. Everybody else has opted for Supras or Astons, and they clearly seem to be very competitive. Why, if you're Cody Lukovsky, would you have gone for the Corvette?
I mean, there's got to be a reason for it. You know, I can't tell you what it is, unfortunately, but maybe he feels that over the course of a race itself, it has better pace. You know, I mean, we know Cody goes away and does a hell of a lot of practice for these races, as you would kind of expect him to, given his position in the championship. So maybe he feels the car just develops better over the stint than the Supra and the Aston does. It's always it's challenging sometimes to get the best of the BOP and understand it properly. Some of these cars do better over short periods of time, some do better over long periods, some are better on fuel, some are worse. And I'm sure one of those reasons is why Cody's in the Corvette. But he seems to have the pace of the guys in front. He just had a bit of a bad start, I think.
60% win percentage Cody Lukovsky has had in 2020 in the Nations Cup this year. It's unbelievable. Out of 51 races, he's won 31 of them, finished in the top 5 43 times as well, and led 322 laps out of 660. That's an unbelievable statistic.
He's got the best lap too so far, on an 18.2, so he's got the fastest lap of everybody at the moment. So obviously the pace is there, just needs to not be picking up those penalties. Meanwhile, Lindgren and Bradley, that McLaren showing that although it's an old car, still got some life in it yet. Looking to challenge Bradley. Bradley's just sort of gone backwards from the start of the race, I think. Maybe had a strong start and then just didn't quite deliver from there. Down to 7th place now as Lindgren gets a bit sideways and exit there. So easy to do that when you're applying the power, just being a little bit too impatient. Back of the car steps out. You have to correct it, which means coming off the throttle. And that means that Bradley has the run back into here. Now, the side-by-side go into chicane now. No. Looks like Lindgren pulls out of that one. Oh, there's been contact there. Who is that going down? I think that's Cy Bishop. I think that's Cy Bishop there going down. Bishop's made a mistake. Down to 10th place through the chicane. There he is. So that'll be massively frustrating for the Kiwi driver. We know how quick he is and how quick he can be. I'd love to see a replay of that, but it's very rare you see one of our guys get it wrong through there, but Cy definitely did, and down to 10th he goes.
Cody Lukovsky's into the lead as well now at the top of this one, ahead of Andrew Lee.
What happened there then?
Yeah, it's 1.6 seconds, so I'm assuming Lee must have made some kind of an error.
Maybe contact between Cody and somebody else, I don't know.
Maybe that's why Bishop's gone down the order, perhaps. We didn't see what happened on the screen, but the upshot is that this man here, starting on pole position, now leads the way, Cody Lukovsky, and he's on a 1.7 second advantage. I don't know what it is, but whenever the cards seem to fall, they always seem to fall in his favour. when things go wrong, it's coming up Cody, to pull Simpson's quote in there at the moment, and he's doing a brilliant job. Great to see there for him.
I think, unfortunately, we haven't. I mean, I would love to have a replay of that. You know, unfortunately, we haven't got that right now. So your guess is as good as ours of what happened there. But again, as Tom said, the overall thing is that now Cody leads by 1.8 seconds from Jones, who was looking like she would be taking lead at some point. I think there may be a little bit of a contact, maybe between Lee, Jones, and Bishop, and that's put.
Yeah, exactly.
Through. That's my best guess.
If that indeed was the case, Jones has really profited from that because she's not lost too much time in respect to the other competitors. Bishop now into the pit lane then, so he's just completely writing this lap off, going to the medium. So he is going to be at least 2 stopping in this race because, to remind you, they have to run at each tyre compound at least once in this one. See, Cody there really has got some connection issues, as we can see his car floating around the screen all over the place at the moment. Here then is Andrew Lee in 3rd position, just running really deep into that hairpin. I think that just must be the line. Very late apex into there quite clearly. And this is where you need to get a good exit, because if you don't have a good exit, you're coming through these S-bends, coming up the hill and then down the hill through the S-bends, and you're carrying that mistake all the way through, losing a consistent amount of time. And it's all about a positive corner exit in these cars, and All these drivers now fighting amongst one another. You can see Lee there in 3rd place, Simmons very close behind in 4th position as well, kicking up a bit of dust. Might look a bit dramatic on screen that, but it doesn't cost them too much time if it's just very minor, such as just dipping a wheel off ever so slightly. But anyway, it makes it very interesting to see what's happening here with these guys.
You think about how precise these guys have got to be in these cars. You know, I mean, these Group 3 cars, 500 plus horsepower, rear-wheel drive, these guys do not race with traction control. They believe it's quicker. I believe it's quicker too. Haven't driven it a bit myself, and I'm not sure if any of you guys at home have experienced 500 horsepower, but I can tell you that's a lot to put through your right foot, even with all this aero and all this tyre technology. At the same time you're fighting like this. Here's Simmons on Lee. Simmons on the outside there, of course, Matt Simmons, Tokyo winner of the Manufacturers Series, also an ex-GT Academy champion. Looks around the outside of Lee, shows you why he did so well in real-life racing and in the GT Academy. Sends position up there, up into 3rd place and now in pursuit of Emily Jones. So great bit of work there, as I was just saying how hard it all was. Matt Simmons makes it look nice and easy.
Well, that's the thing with a skilled driver, isn't it? They can make these things look nice and easy, and that is, as you said, Jimmy, exactly what Matt Simmons has done. His next target will be Emily Jones in P2. Will he be able to find his way through there? Lap 8 out of 20 we're on, so we're coming up towards the halfway stages here, and this is where the drivers will surely be thinking about making their pit stops before too long. Around lap 9 or 10 if they're going to run the medium tyres and then the hards towards the end, or if they're going to do a middle stint on the hards and then go to the mediums for the end. The likely story here will probably be, if you're going to run the hards, you'll run them from as minimum time as you possibly can. So that's 1 lap, essentially. They'll do 1 lap on them, come back into the pit lane, change over to the mediums, and get them back on the quickest compound of tyre to the end of this race. But let's see what's going to happen. As we know, in racing, things can change. We have seen a few drivers doing a few oddball strategies, but I wonder whether they'll do anything to try and upset the apple cart here, given how late it is, especially in the season. We're very much coming towards the end of the online season for the top 16 superstars now. Only a couple of rounds left, so I wonder whether it's worth taking a risk such as that. If it doesn't work out, it could cost you quite a lot in terms of your championship position.
So you know what I would love to see return to? We had one race like that this season, is just sort of the non-tyre change, non-fuel saving race, you know, as Matt Simmons there, very late, as I say, on that, into the pit lane, medium, seems to be the way to go right now. Fuel all seems about the same for each competitor. Maybe it's because my IQ is way down in the double digits, but
can confirm.
but you know, I kind of like the idea of a straight race every now and then, and still have all this strategy as well. But you know, they both have their place, but every now and then I don't think just a straight up point to point would go amiss. And Lee's come out in a bit of a tricky place right beside Lindgren here. Now he's not going to give up that place, but he has to. Lindgren takes the place. Thank you very much, he says. That Macca, he's the only mid-engine car in the field. He's doing all right. That thing's pretty quick in a straight line too.
Seems to be, doesn't it? And well, I wonder what the advantages and the disadvantages would be. I mean, we've talked about it to death, really, over the top 16 superstars over 2020, but it's the weight distribution, the balance of the car feels a bit different. Does it have any advantage or disadvantage with traction out of a corner being mid-engine?
Well, you've got to think about it this way. If you're driving a front-engine car, you have basically understeer is the thing you're trying to tune out. If you're driving a mid-engine car, you're trying to tune out oversteer. So in terms of rotation, that McLaren will be fantastic on the initial bit, but the problem is you start over-rotating just a little bit, you start burning those rear tyres, and then you burn the rear tyres, you rotate a bit more, and vice versa. It just keeps going and going from there. So Voon there, becoming victim to Matt Simmons, going all the way around the outside there on the fresh medium compounded tyre. That doesn't show the difference in tyre wear. I'm not quite sure what else will, because Nick Voon's a fast driver, but compared to Simmons on the fresh tyres, there's no chance. Lindgren fancies it too. There you go, sliding in there in the McLaren. That's what we call a nice drift pass. Gets that done. Those rear tyres definitely up a temperature now if they weren't before, and now into the toe of Matt Simmons. Lee as well through, so Voon's got to come in this lap surely. Yes, he does. He lost a bit of time there, I think, trying to keep those guys behind, but that's pretty much illustrating my point there. That McLaren will do that all day. Look at that straight line speed. He's going to go around the outside or try to. He won't make that stick, I don't think, on Matt Simmons. I say that, he's looking, he might have it done. No, they're still there.
Curve on the outside is never a way to get traction, and he does just have to relent for a few moments, but Lindgren seems to have really come alive in the mid stages of this one. Now all over the rear wing of the Supra of Matt Simmons, through into the chicane we go, and it's all about threading the eye of a needle through here. The thing he needs to focus on is the exit out of the following hairpin. If he can send it down the inside into there, that might be an opportunity for him, but I think on the exits where he needs to, he's a bit wide though. That's allowing Lee to come through up the inside, so Dylan Lindgren has stitched his own goat really more than anything, because now Lee is alongside him. Side by side they come, nearly over the brow of the hill and through in towards the S-bend. And, it's just so close between them. This camera angle gives a real sensation of speed.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the goats come into it. So I was thinking, what are you about? But yeah, it does really give you an idea of just how quick these things are through there. In fact, you've even got it on your screen there, 130 mile an hour to go up the hill here. And then you slam on the brakes down to about 75, 70 mile an hour through there. Nice and easy on exit. You can use quite a lot of that curb on exit, but be careful on the throttle. These curbs tend to be a bit slippier than you think they are as well. And Lindgren just about recovering and coming back now in that McLaren. I think maybe he's got a little switch under the dash. You know, he's not told the stewards about. Flicks it up, 50 plus horsepower. Thank you very much, mate. But watch him on the straight here. I think that McLaren's got a straight line speed over the Supras, definitely.
Like an overboost speed. Let's see then. Yeah, he's got the advantage of the slipstream. Has Dylan Lindgren here then. So running on board we go down the start-finish straight. Matt Simmons in front does have a slipstream, but it's going to be a lot fainter. Onto the brakes into the first corner. It didn't close up too much
good
there.
Couple of car laps, I think he got
there. Was a little bit of closing, wasn't there? But you can see Lee is just looking so aggressive at the moment behind the wheel of that Supra. He seems to have really come alive in these mid-stages. His tyres will be a little bit fresher than Dylan Lindgren's. Coming in towards the chicane, it's just not a place you pass through there. You have to go one at a time through, otherwise you're both ending up in the barrier as
just like
Dylan Lindgren does that right on cue. Commentator's curse is alive and well. Thank you very much. Dylan Lindgren sadly plummets down the order, and that is a very sorry state of affairs after what has been a very promising race for the Australian.
I say he was looking a little bit ragged throughout most of that race. I think part of that McLaren, and he gets in the way of Knowles as well, slow off the line. Dylan, mate, get back on the throttle. You can't cruise through that section of a circuit. That is an amateur mistake. I understand being a little bit frustrated, but you've got to get back on the throttle. You can't just go slow through that section. It's a silly thing to do. But anyone who's driven the chicane of death, or as Brooks said earlier on, if you go through the other way, it's become the chicane of life. Obviously
not the circle of, it's not Lion King or anything like that.
Obviously not for Dylan, unfortunately. But you have to have a perfect line through there if you take it flat, and any deviation from that, and you get walled, basically. That's what happened to Dylan there. Anyway, meanwhile, the battle for third, fourth, and fifth still very much underway. 3 Supras all in the line. We're on board with Bradley right now. Great onboard view here of this GR Supra as we pop down the front straight. Now, look at that speed in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Then we'll go up to 6th gear, 150 mile an hour. We're going to touch about 165 or so before we break down to the first corner. Hard on the anchors. Chuck the car to the inside, a little bit wide there on the first part of that. The second apex seemed to hook up nicely. You can use that curb on exit, and now this is really a hard place to be if you're Bradley, because you've got to try and spy your entrance into the chicane here. When you look at the car in front, it can make it hard to spy your turning point. Let's see how he does. Chuck the car to the inside, a bit of a breakthrough there. It's not flat through there as I thought it was originally. That last part of the course, you see, actually touching the wall a tiny bit on the way through, and you see just how marginal it is through there. If you make one little mistake, yeah, you become Dylan, unfortunately.
Doing a Dylan should be the expression now.
No, I don't think he'll like that. I wouldn't like that either. But we're still on board with Bradley. It's a great onboard shot, this. Now you're going to see just how much the track drops away in this reverse configuration of Dragon Trail. Go down the hill here, and look at that. Awesome view down the hill. Use all this curb on the inside. You can hook the car in here. Some differing lines there. Lee a little bit wide in the second part of the chicane. That should help Bradley get up behind. Maybe look for a move up into this left hand. He goes offensive, looks to the inside corner. Can't quite get up inside Lee, though, who had to brake a little bit later to avoid giving him the inside line. But you're seeing all the results here. Great little scrap here between Lee and Bradley. Yeah,
this is great to see. Just having a look at Micah Bradley's statistics so far. He's only done 14 races in the Nations Cup as part of our online season. He's won 2 of them, had 6 top 5 finishes. So some very impressive statistics despite being relatively new to this as well. And don't forget, you can, of course, get involved with the FIA GCC races, and maybe one day you'll end up in one of these very events as part of the top 16 superstars. Just to give you an idea, by the way, Kodolikovsky, if you're thinking that he might be cruising out in front, now he's got a bit of an advantage, 5.3 seconds, in fact, over Emily Jones. He's not. He set his fastest lap overall last time around, a 137.6. Hugely impressive stuff from the young Australian, and it's just increasing that gap lap after lap, corner after corner, and now really in the rhythm, and that is exactly what we're used to seeing Kodolikovsky do. But this trio of Supras scrapping for the final spot on the podium is very interesting. Matt Simmons here, kind of on the back foot, really, with Lee and Bradley very close to one another.
Well, Jones doing what she needs to do as well, just
absolutely.
Sort of keeping clear. But if anything happens, they'll all be there on her. Can you imagine, right? You're Emily Jones. You're putting in a fantastic race. You're second place. You've just gone through your last lap. Think, oh man, that was that was quick. That was. Oh hell! And you look up at the timesheet and see your last lap time was nearly a second slower than the guy in front of you. You think, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Cody, he's in a different level. You know, we have a word for that in sim racing. It's the alien. You're on a different planet. You're that much quicker. And Cody, 100% alien.
Yeah, the level of dedication all of these drivers are putting into these events in terms of working out the strategy and how they're going to drive their race is just phenomenal. The laps that they'll put in and the practice to make themselves competitive at the sharp end of the grid.
He is the only driver, Cody, in the 37s.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
And the next best driver is a 38.5.
And it's not like he's in the 37s just by a little bit as well. I mean, he's in the 37s consistently, but his lap time of a 37, the fastest one overall in this race, was a 37.6. That's 4 tenths inside.
No, he's got his Corvette, he's got his highway gear, 6th gear. He's doing 4,000 RPM down the straight. he's got his hand up. He's got his Eagles on going down the straight.
His Eagles on.
He's loving life. Hotel California. But this is the thing. We sort of joke about Cody a bit, and we sort of again, the connection's not the best. So if you're wondering why his line is so eccentric. We joke about Cody, but like there is just supreme skill there. You know, like if someone makes things look that easy, then that is what makes you, good at your craft, be it racing, be it something else. Only racing exists in my life, so I don't know what else exists. But to be that good and to make it look easy, if I can guarantee you, if Brooks or I had a go at that, we'd be probably about 2-3 seconds a lap slower at the least.
Yeah, it's rostrum or hospital for us, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, I think it's just mainly hospital. Especially for you.
Yeah, definitely for me. I've got a habit of crashing things, unfortunately. Just having a look, by the way, a little bit further down the order. Gooms and Kander, 6th and 7th position. That's a nice little scrap that's going on between them. Only a couple of tenths of a second separating those two Australian drivers a little bit further down the order. So we'll keep an eye on that gap, see whether it increases or decreases. You can see here Aston Martin versus Aston Martin then. Kander in 6th place, Gooms in 7th. And I love the way that livery on Gooms' car makes it look like a more modern Aston Martin. I see how they've tried to make the grille look like it does on the most recent model there.
I think it looks terrible. I think it looks awful.
Don't hold back, yeah, go on.
I mean, like, no, sorry. I get to see a modern livery, but no, don't do it. That's my advice. But Aston, yeah. So I mean, what do you do in this situation? The guy in front of you's got the same car, so you think, oh, okay, well I've got no advantage there, so I've got to outdrive him. And then sometimes you get into this situation. I've been in a situation before where you just get stuck behind someone for like 20 laps, and you just wait there, and nothing you can do about it. Cy Bishop, by the way, coming on to the hard tyre. What could have been for Cy? Cy and Dylan so far have been victims of the chicane of death. TM. I'm still waiting for the official Gran Turismo chicane of death merchandise T-shirt. I would buy that in a heartbeat.
Go and make it then. I think that Cy Bishop probably need to talk to a bishop for some divine guidance after this race. He's had such a shocker down there.
What will the bishop say? Don't hit the wall.
I mean, he might have something to offer.
Okay. Again, we just we didn't see the incident between these guys earlier on, so it might not be as simple as that. I don't want to get in trouble with Cy or the.
Who just stick us on a livery for the next race? What are you worried about?
Oh yeah, some abusive livery, no doubt.
You were wrong, Tom and Jimmy, or something like that.
Well, that's valid every race.
It's very true, isn't it?
But he's the only one so far who has gone onto that hard compounder tyre. You do need to run both at some point. Similar rules to as we normally have, of course. You have the medium and the hard tyre at your disposal. Both has to be run at some point in the race. There is no minimum time on the tyre, so you can use it for 1 lap, 5 laps, or 10 laps, depending on what your strategy dictates. But Cy right now in no man's land. He's got about 5 seconds or so to Voon in front. He'll get that in the pit stop. I think realistically, Cy may be on for a 7th place at this point, but higher than that will be, I think, a bit difficult for him.
Yeah, just in front of him, you can see Kander and Gooms there, who are in 6th and 7th place respectively at the moment, haven't made their second pit stop in this one. Surely won't be too long before they'll be thinking about changing over to the hard compound of tyres for the closing stage of this one. You can see Gooms there all over the back of Kander. Is he going to send it down the inside at the first turn? Not quite at the moment. Kander, they're doing a good job of just holding his line, driving for the ERT esports team there, and coming out of the first corner into the chicane, where, as we know, it is very much one at a time. But Gooms there looking pretty confident, pretty much the same pace that these two have been running, give or take a couple of tenths of a second. So they're looking pretty competitive, but I do wonder if Gooms is able to get himself ahead of Kander, whether he'll be able to pull out a gap.
Maybe. Again, similar cars, so it's hard to do that, as Gooms doing his best to lose as much time as possible down the bottom of the course there. It's very easy to go wide, but it gives him a better exit though, so maybe that was his plan up the hill. Meanwhile, I was going to say that Simmons has caught Emily Jones, but then the gap shot up again to about 1.7 seconds. But what has Cody got in that Corvette? You know, we're saying Dylan's got one switch. I think he's got 2 switches in the Corvette. You know,
I reckon he's got keys that you have to turn simultaneously. It's like some big boost button or something like that.
One switch says screw, the other one says you. So up you go, and he drives away. And there you go. 9 seconds is the gap now. And last time around, he was a second quicker, a full second quicker than Emily Jones. And Emily Jones is one of the best drivers in this region.
And just to remind you, by the way, if you've just tuned in for the first time thinking, well, how on earth is he so much quicker? It must be the car. All of these cars are to a balance of performance, a BOP as it's called, so they are tuned to be relatively similar to one another. So there's an element of it, sure. Of course, some cars are stronger in certain areas as Simmons and Lee come into the pit lane here to put on the hard combative tyre. Sure, there's an element of the car that is involved with it, but also the driver is a massive factor in these races.
I mean, yeah, it's the reason why we're talking about these same names over and over again. Now, this is interesting because Emily hasn't pitted. Matt Simmons has pitted in for that fresh compound tyre, but he's come out behind 2 cars that are fighting right now. There's contact between the two. Kander, I think, went to turn in to try and get back behind Gooms, and maybe timed it a bit wrong. It's not a bit of a compromised line, though, going through the chicane. That slows him right down. You saw that. He was slightly inside there. He didn't quite use on the track. That slowed him down on the exit. Now, what Jones is probably hoping is A, that she can gain a bit more time on this medium compounded tyre, and B, that these two hold up Simmons and Lee behind, because those are her main competitors for that second place.
Yeah, she'll have a grin as wide as the Dragon Trail Seaside Circuit at the moment. Emily Jones behind the wheel of Simrig as things stand. Let's see how things go, though, and see whether she comes into the pit lane at the end of this lap, or whether she continues on and will go onto the hard tyre for perhaps either penultimate lap, or the final one as Kander goes wide off into the wall as well and absolutely ruins his race there. And a simple mistake from Kander, just running wide through the S-bends. Thankfully, he doesn't take out any other cars in the process. You can see his car ghosted going through there, and that was a bit of fortune, really, for all the drivers who were following from behind. But either way, that will be a very unwelcome sight there for Paul Kander, who's driven very well so far. And sadly, it all comes done 3 laps before the end of this race.
That ain't it. that ain't it, Mr.
Top
Kander.
analysis from Jimmy Broadbent once more.
It's so easy to do, though, and that would be the frustrating thing. It's one of those things that you just do by mistake. Now, this is important. Where is Simmons?
He's behind.
He's
well
miles behind. Yes, this is a nice little gap there. The gap is actually similar, about 1.8 seconds, but there's a car in between, and that car has not yet gone on to the fresh hard compounder tyre. Now Bradley as well has to pit in, so Jones will hope to sort of stay about where she is here, not get too close to the car in front, not lose any time. Bradley needs to pit, Lacoste needs to pit as well, but Cody's in a different postcode, so don't worry about him. He'll be, unless he makes a big mistake, this is a race summed up for Cody. But the big battle here is for the podium. The last few places, I should say, definitely up for grabs.
You can see in the background there, Gooms versus Simmons as well, side by side down the straight in towards the S-bends we go. Simmons has got track position. He's got 4th place there as well. Here comes Lee on the inside, nearly there of Gooms as well, who's a bit of a sitting duck at the moment. He's out of kilter with everybody else's strategy. Despite these guys being on the hard combative tyre, they're fresher underneath them compared to Gooms. He's very clapped out, medium size. You can see the indicators on there. He's not going to hold up. Lee here sends it up the inside as Lee through into 5th position. They're on different strategies. They're effectively in different races more than anything. So it's not worth him holding it up because it's just going to antagonise the other driver. And, well, as such, Lee now through into 5th place, Gooms down into 6th.
Definitely a hand up in the virtual cockpit there from Lee, so thanks, mate. Off I go. That's what you want to see when you're chasing. You want to see the guy get out your way, basically. I mean, the thing is with Gooms, that whilst that is still racing for position, realistically, kind of as you mentioned, he's got that stop to make. There he goes into the pit lane. He knows he's not going to be fighting these guys at the end of the race. He's going to let them get on with it and let Lee chase Simmons. Now, the gap between Jones and Simmons, 2.3 seconds. That has increased since the pit stop. Only 2 and a bit laps to go, and Lee is really trying. You can see him just tip that Supra. You don't see people backing the Supra into the corners that often, but Lee's definitely doing it. And importantly, he is quick. He's gaining time on Simmons in front, 0.4 of a second. This man, he wants that 3rd position. He wants that last step on the podium. It's so much easier when you can see it, when it's right there in front of you. And I think Lee is very much a contender. Simmons will be aware of that too. Simmons definitely no rookie. He's been around for a while now. Simmons saying that, though, a little bit wide on the first, going for that later apex. Lee opting for a bit of a tighter corner, a bit of a slower exit speed, it seems. But definitely anyone's game at this point. We've got a lap and a half to go. 6 tenths separates them. What can Lee do?
This is very exciting indeed. Lots of tension then over the final position on the podium between Matt Simmons and Andrew Lee. Is Lee going to be able to do anything? Will he be able to find his way past? Lap and a half to go then. Here you can see just in the foreground there, Emily Jones. Looks like she's got second place sewn up if she can just keep it on the straight and narrow. But Simmons and Lee are looking pretty handy here. I do think it'll be a little bit too little too late. Of course, Jones made a pit stop last time around, so she's beginning to heat into her tyres here on this outlap whilst these guys have been pushing flat to the floor. Koliakowski then does come into the pit lane for the closing stages of this race. He'll come out and emerge comfortably, I believe, in the race lead because he had such an advantage over his competitors. Then goes out of the pit lane, doesn't take any fuel on board, onto the medium to the hard tyres for the final lap in this one, and he is still going to emerge very much in front in this race here.
I don't think I've ever seen a fuel-efficient Corvette before. But that one did okay, apparently. Yeah, I mean, for Cody, this would be brilliant. Imagine coming out the pit lane with a lap to go over 10-second lead. I mean, you can just drive around, and sit gear the entire lap and not even worry about things. He won't do that, I can guarantee you, but that is the way you'd approach it. This is the real battle now for the last step of the podium. Matt Simmons, of course, immensely talented driver, someone who will be looking very much hold on to that. Lee as well, also very, very quick. A little bit slower though for the first part of the chicane, but quicker for the second. Got that exit speed, very nice. Simmons struggling a bit now. Here's a chance for Lee. Will he send it? He gives it, and the go is right on the quarter panel. And Simmons just late on the brakes.
Pushed him off.
Oh yeah, a bit of a bump pass there. What happened there? Lee, I think got off the throttle there and went, sorry, mate. Okay, had that back. And then gives it another go. Yeah, flash the light, say, sorry, dude, I didn't mean to go that deep into the corner. But Simmons will retain the position. But importantly for Lee, that's probably his one and only chance gone, unless he can get a good run out of his S's.
Yeah, that is where it's going to count really more than anything. He might have shot himself in the foot here, Andrew Lee. Let's see what he can do then. A little bit wide there out of the corner. That's not going to help his drive as they come up the hill in towards the left-hander. Simmons goes defensive. Lee goes towards the outside. Is he going to try and get the switch back here? Lee think he might be a bit of a day late and a dollar short if he tries to send it through into these couple of corners. It's going to have to be a run to the line then, surely, as they come on to the final series of corners. You can see Simmons once again going defensive. Lee forced to go to the outside. Lukowski comes over the line to take the win in the Nations Cup Top 16 Superstars race. Jones is going to come home in second position to take a very well-deserved podium for the Australian driver, but the battle for the final spot on the podium is going to go down to the line between Simmons and Lee. Side by side we go. Who's going to get it? It's a drag to the line and a photo finish. Simmons on the inside, but I think Lee just managed to get it by 16 thousandths of a second on the line. Andrew Lee takes the final place on the podium ahead of Matt Simmons in fourth. What a finish here.
You'll love to see that. I bet he had his head down in the cockpit trying to get a little bit more, less air resistance there, but that's fantastic. And he set that up from the chicane. He got the draft out there, and I can assure you he had both feet on the throttle for that last part of the lap there. Lee just pipping Simmons on the line. Simmons will be upset with that, but you can never be upset after a cool finish like that.
That was fantastic between those two drivers. What a great final lap for the third position in that race. Koliakowski takes a win. Look at that. Unbelievable. It was a thousandth of a second in the end, so the graphic we had on the screen was even more close, as you can see now. 1,000th of a second between Lee and Simmons to the line in the Nations Cup Top 16 Superstars race. Bradley in 5th, Boone in 6th, Gooms down in 7th position, Mahindajit in 8th, Cy Bishop, he'll be kicking himself after that one, down in 9th place. Likewise, Paul Kander as well in P10, then Stankowski, Edwards, Knowles, Palmer, Fowles and Dylan Lindgren in 16th position. Fowles and Lindgren sadly not classified at the end of that race. Well, what an exciting Nations Cup event we've had here for the Top 16 Superstars for the Oceania region. I only hope the Manufacturers Series is even more exciting.
So this is the place where I will try to overtake. Here, you see?
Well, it helps if I do that. Oh no!
Come on,
Well, hello guys, welcome back to the Gran Turismo studio. I am joined today by a very special guest. This is Lucas Ordonez, of course, GT Academy champ, Super GT driver, LMP1 driver, big list.
Hi Jimmy, how are you doing? Yeah, it's great to see you. Long time not seen.
It has been a long time. And today, Lucas is going to be using his vast experience as a racing driver to teach us the best places to overtake here at Suzuka, where our manufacturers come. is being held?
Well, my first race in Japan was in 2013, and it was a official test here. And then I raced full season in Japan in 2014, and then I did Formula 3 and Super GT 500 in 2015. So yeah, Suzuka is one of my favorite tracks in the world for sure.
Well, that's okay then, because I've done none of that. I've played played some simulators, so I think you win. Where are you looking to overtake around here? Because it's not an easy track to overtake at, is it?
Yeah, Suzuka is really, well known as a very difficult overtaking track. The most interesting place for overtaking are definitely the hairpin and the chicane.
So Lucas, we're just going to set up now for the hairpin pass. So getting a good run out of Dunlop is important, but not as important as getting the run out of a second Degner though, because you've got to make sure you've got the overspeed.
Exactly, here this is really important to brake early, but have a good run through the exit curve. Use the draft of your rival and then dive into the inside.
So I see you there. Don't want to give you the room.
Oh, that was tight.
That was a Super GT pass, man.
With a little door-to-door, right?
So I'm gonna I'm gonna come back at you now. I'm gonna fight you now to the end of the lap. Let's race to the line, Lucas.
Okay.
You can show me, Mr. Master Overtaker. Come on, head down. Come on, go. What about getting a good exit out of 130R through here? So I do that. I'm a little bit sluggish through there. I'm going to take my normal racing line, braking. Lucas brakes a little bit later than I do. Chucks it out of the inside, blocks the apex, so I can't come back at him. And that there is just textbook pass there, man.
Yeah, man, it was too easy.
Have you done this before? So that is how to overtake at Suzuka, as taught by Mr. Real Life Racing driver Lucas Ordonez. Lucas, great to see you, mate. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us a couple of tips.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure, and hope to see you soon, guys. And let's enjoy Top 16 Superstars.
So let's take a look at the race details then, shall we, for the Manufacturer Series of the Top 16 Superstars events. You can see Group 4 cars at the Suzuka circuit, just 1 compound of tyre for these drivers, racing hard, 16 laps, 2 times fuel consumption, 3 times tyre wear. That's going to be an interesting prospect, given there's no tyre strategies to think about here, Jimmy.
I'll tell you what, though, I wouldn't want to be in a Group 4 car for those S's. These things don't have that much aero to them, so you're just basically battling understeer the entire way through. But that's what these guys are racing, and I'm here in a nice, cosy commentary booth. So,
where are the passing places we're looking at for this lap, then? Where do we think drivers are going to make those moves, if or when they do?
Well, if you fancy yourself with a bit of a centre cross situation, there's always the last chicane, 16-17. Good place to pass here, but different from the chicane as it was back then. T1's good as well if you have a car that's quick in a straight line. Bit slipstream. Chuck yourself through into T1, although it's very much one line through there to be quick. And of course, after the Degners towards the hairpin there, T11. That's a good place to chuck one up the inside if someone is not really watching their mirrors.
Well, let's see what happens then, shall we? And head over to the grid for the start of the race. Over to the lining up of the cars then. At the start of this race, you can see the Group 4 machines adorning this Suzuka circuit. Emily Jones qualifies on pole position in the Audi TC front-wheel drive car, going well around here. But Matt Simmons in the Porsche Cayman alongside her on the front row. The Ford Mustang of Adam Wilk is in 3rd position with the V8 Supercars replica livery on it. Keaton McDonald in the BMW M4 is in P4. Kodolakowski in the Mercedes is in 5th position. Can he repeat the same feat of the Nations Cup race? Andrew Lee lines up in P6 in the Subaru WRX. P7, Jonathan Stankowski in the Volkswagen Scirocco. And then 8th position, Matthew Allen in the Alfa 4C. Very much quicker in Group 4 trim. Let's see whether he can convert that into a strong result. Gopi Mahindajit will be hoping for the same in the Nissan GTR. The Mazda Atenza of Barbara lines up in 10th position. P11 is Jay Wong in the 2nd of the Mazda Atenzas with a BTC SCS replica livery on it. Connor Healy lines up P12 in the Honda NSX. P13, Cy Bishop, redemption for him, hopefully, in the Manufacturers Series race. Tame lines up in P14 in the Renault Megane. And the final row of the grid is Niklas Voon in the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. P16 of McIver in the second of the BMW M4s. Now, Jimmy, at this point, I'd normally ask you about tyre strategy, but there isn't any. So what's going to be going through these drivers' minds in this race? Pit stop or no pit stop?
No pit stop and send it. That's what you've got to do, man. Now, pit stop here is a lot of time. It's a long pit lane here. It's a fast part of the circuit, of course, in the pit straight as well. The delta for the pit stop is quite long, so you want to try and get through that as quick as you can. This is a bit of a turn for the books. Emily Jones should be very happy with that in the Audi. We know, though, that TT is fast in Group 4 trim under the current BOP conditions, so we know that car is incredibly quick, and she'll be very much smiling about that, of course. Someone who won't be happy with being down in 5th is Mr. Cozy Lukowski in the Mercedes. Not quite having a good time of things in the manufacturer series. So watch out for Simmons, watch out for Wilk too. He's always been quick in those Fords, so this is going to be a good race, I think.
I wonder what the tyre wear is going to be like on that Audi, though, after 16 laps being front-wheel drive. Yes, it's not going to be an easy car to pilot. No. Let's see what happens, though, as Jones comes around the final corner. So it is round 28 of the manufacturer series for the top 16 superstars of the Oceania region. Emily Jones on pole position, Matthew Simmons alongside her on that front row. 16 laps here at Suzuka as we go green and racing then in Japan for round 28. So Jones leads the field over the line, followed by Simmons, followed by Wilk and McDonald. Then Lukowski in P5. Work to do for him. Drivers weaving, getting heat into the tyres as they head into that first corner. Everybody being very sensible through there and no surprise at all. But clearly there you can see Wilk closing up onto the back of Simmons through those first couple of corners. The thing is, it's so much one at a time through this first sector that we shouldn't see anybody being rash and too aggressive. It's a very long race and there's a lot to lose in these opening corners rather than there is to gain.
That Mustang's a bit of a hefty boy, isn't he? Look how big that car is. You don't really understand how big that car is until you see it compared to the others out there on circuit, and seeing it try and navigate its way through these S's here. Had a bit of a half time, but of course Wilk there, very much experienced for the Ford brand. We're on board now with McDonald in the Bimmer, the M4, coming through the second Degner now. Use a bit of curb here, use a lot of the curb on exit. And then we go all the way down now to the hairpin. Great overtaking spot here if you are close enough. That Ford just driving away in a straight line as you'd imagine it to. Old school V8 muscle. Into the left hand, now the hairpin. Now all about getting good traction out of here on the way up to the spoon curve. Nice and calm so far from our guys in the GT4s. Emily putting away a little bit in that Audi TT. Again, she's got to be careful of that tyre wear around here. As you said at the start of the race, front wheel drive, that'll definitely eat through the tyres as time goes. Wilk looks up the inside into the spoon curve, uses the straight line speed of that Mustang there, just bullies his way through, and now he'll go in pursuit of Emily Jones. And that straight line speed definitely helping out on this part of the course, but it won't so much when we get round to the S's again.
Not the usual place to find your way past there at Spoon unless you're feeling particularly brave, and Adam Wilk clearly took his brave pills before the start of this race. Down this straight, though, is where we're going to see the difference in straight line speed between these cars. You can see there Wilk just putting out a little bit of a gap there to Matt Simmons, but Emily Jones, meanwhile, 1.1 seconds ahead of Wilk. This is coming towards the end of the first lap. If she can continue this pace, she is in a very good position indeed. Through the chicane we go then, and out of it now, coming round the long final corner here as it drops down. It's actually easy to light up the rear tyres going through there as you're trying to get on the power.
Look at that difference there, Tom. He's just driving away. That is the V8 motor right there. V8 power down the straight. The draft finally starting to come back into effect for Simmons, but that's going to be a big part of this race. If you're in one of those Caymans, you're hoping to get a launch out of a corner. If you get a launch out of a corner, it won't matter, because Wilk will just go, all right, put his foot down, and he'll go. So that says to me that Simmons' best goal of now getting by is in a tight part of the circuit and just basically just sending it up the inside when he gets a chance to. But that's going to be very difficult when the car in front is so much quicker. But what this will mean for this section, look at this train through here already. The Mustang's a lot slower than these guys through here. And then look at the gap to Jones, who's now got no one in front of her to slow her down.
Well, quite exactly. She's just able to clear off and run her own race, really. You can see the gap there going back to, I believe, Jonathan Stankowski in 7th position. So quite a few drivers involved in that train of cars, but all keeping themselves relatively calm as things stand through the Degner curves, named after a chap called Ernst Degner, who was actually a motorcycle racer, used to race back here with Suzuki in the mid-60s. An interesting story as to how different corners sort of got their names here at Suzuka. Some of them have got interesting stories, and then you get 130R, which is called 130R because it's a radius of 130 degrees.
Those guys, their imagination, man. I wish I had that. I wish I had that. Man. So we're just watching now, focusing on McDonald in the BMW, still stuck behind Simmons in third place. This is where Simmons was passed to that previous by Wilk in the Mustang. And this is the disheartening part of your Simmons, McDonald or Lukowski. You should look ahead and you just see Wilk wave his mirror as he drives away in that Mustang. Now Lee, he's looking pretty quick there in that Impreza. We know that Impreza's not bad in the straight line either. A lot of the straight line speed's fairly similar here. We're now coming around 130R, aforementioned corner, and into probably one of the best overtaking spots. Simmons is a lot closer than he has been through there, using that corner speed that came and really sent it up the inside of the Mustang. No, Wilk covers it off, so sits in the middle of a circle there to give Simmons nowhere to go, and will then probably just blast out of the corner and give himself a bit of a gap going towards T1 again. And Simmons will have to try it all over again next time we get round to the bus stop.
I can sense some frustration creeping in over the course of this race for Matthew Simmons, because it must be so disheartening, as you said, Jimmy, to be stuck behind this guy, knowing that you've got the pace to get past him, and as soon as you do get past him, you'll probably clear off, but not being able to do so.
Well, that's Simmons' mistake. He should have covered the move at Spoon on the first lap. He didn't think he would go for it, and Wilk went, okay, I'll take that, cheers mate, and now of course he's leading this little pack. So Emily Jones leading, Wilk second. You're watching back from his rear bumper now. Matt Simmons behind us in the Porsche, getting very close in third. The splitter almost touching our camera there. And actually, no, he did. So Simmons there, contact with Wilk and a 1 second penalty. I've got to say, that was maybe a bit of a harsh penalty, if you ask me. I don't think anything really happened there. But Simmons given a 1 second penalty, which he'll be saying. There'll be some colourful language inside that Cayman right now, I imagine.
Well, he's Australian, so there's always colourful language inside that crash helmet, isn't there? I jest, of course, but Matt Simmons, that's not what he'll have wanted down in P3 and presumably to drop to the back of this group, because they're all so closely knit to one another. You can see Gopin Mahindajit in the background there with Stankowski now, who's made himself a little bit wider, who's got himself ahead into P7. And through they go out of that corner in towards the left hand. You see Kevin Lukowski here. We're usually used to seeing him finding his way past a lot of competitors in the early stages of this one. Now he's finally getting his act together on lap 3, but just doesn't seem to have the pace. That Group 4 trim Mercedes isn't quite as quick. He had a look there, didn't he? He had a lunge. Was there a bit of contact with Keaton McDonald into Spoon and goes round as Keaton McDonald? Was there more contact there? We didn't quite see what happened, but either way, McDonald goes round. He faces the wrong way, and that is the BMW's drivers' race done and dusted there. So he is now in the lower half of the top 10 and is just going to be lucky to cling on to 10th position, with Allen coming very close behind. But either way, oh dear for Keaton McDonald, that is not what he wanted at all.
So my take on that is that he was quite late defending from Cody. I think he moved quite late to defend the move, and then as a result he had to run a bit wider to try and carry some speed, and he just put his right rear wheel on the slippy stuff on exit, and that tyre is under tremendous load through that corner. As soon as it slides out, the rest of the car goes, okay, off we go. And that's what happened to McDonald, I think. So, unfortunately, a driver error from what we can see on our end from McDonald. He'll be kicking himself there, but that's just part of the game around here. That's part of racing. You can't be doing that, and that means his race or his battle now for the podium pretty much gone. That has allowed Wilk a little bit of breathing room, though, and Cody, as we've always said, he just seems to benefit from everyone else's mistakes. Up in third place now.
Yep, it's coming up Cody once again here in this Manufacturer Series race. The reason I referenced, by the way, contact, because of course we didn't see it on screen, but we know that in the last race Lukowski was suffering from some connection issues, so I wonder whether that would have been perhaps something that we didn't see.
Better in this race though, isn't it?
On camera, it seems to be a little bit better, a bit more stable, which is always nice to see. Makes our life easier, makes the driver's life a lot easier as well.
Strong and stable, Cody Lukowski is what he is. So. But he's coming through the second Degler now, and the lead's behind him. He's someone who's also benefited from this little scramble at the front there. He's up to fourth in the Impreza. The Impreza, we were looking, was one of the manufacturers that we sort of had our eye on for the win of this thing back when Mick Cazal had a bit of time to get involved, but he's been nowhere really for this season. He's been busy, so having to be carried by the rest of the guys here. And Lee doing a good job there. I mean, a fourth spot around here would be a great result for the Impreza outfit.
Yeah, it certainly would be. We know that Impreza has been quick, as you said, Jimmy, in other guises, in other races in the EMEA region, for example, but no such luck in this Oceania region race. You can see Matthew Simmons there in the Porsche Cayman. I've got a real soft spot for those, I've got to say. I just think they're absolutely wonderful. I love the flat six engine that's in them as well. I think it makes such a lovely howl. And you can see him now all over the back of the Volkswagen Scirocco of Jonathan Stankowski. The Group 4 class, by the way, if you're new to GT or new to GT Sport in particular, is of course based on the real-world GT4 category, but it does have some fictional entries such as the Volkswagen Scirocco in there, as well as a few others up and down the field, likes of the Ford Mustang and so on and so forth. And another penalty there for Matt Simmons. I'm not sure what that's all about. I can see to my right Jimmy Broadbent gesticulating. What's going on there?
I can't tell you why he's got that. I watched him go through the chicane.
No track limits?
Look normal. No, I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so. But, you know, of course, if that's there, I mean, we only have one angle here, so we may be incorrect. But this, unfortunately, is just robbing Matt Simmons of a good race, it seems here. We'll shift our focus for now to Cody Lukowski. He is gaining on Wilk in front in the barge, the V8 barge in front at the moment.
Fastest lap last time around for Cody Lukowski as well. Just
it's the switches, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah, he's got the two switches flicked up there as Cody Lukowski. And you can see him there now closing up onto the back of Adam Wilk. 1.9 seconds that gap sits between those two drivers and Emily Jones, who is just keeping that gap quite stable and quite nice, lapping at around the same pace actually as Cody Lukowski as well. She was only 5 thousandths of a second slower than Cody Lukowski's lap last time around, so she is clearly still looking very comfortable on lap 5 out of 16 here. And I wonder what Cody's going to do. I was going to call him Codium then, because he's been so much on the podium this year. But I wonder if he can get himself ahead of the Ford of Wilk. Will he be able to close that gap down? That's a crucial question. Or is he taking too much out of his tyres too soon here?
I don't think he'll be able to get ahead. Unless he has a great run coming through 130R and Wilk in our favourite little barge there doesn't. There's not really going to be many places that SLS can get by. And I say SLS because it is the older model. It isn't the newer AMG. It's an older one. So we go down the straight in the draft at the moment. Now, let's see what Cody can do here. He's got the draft. We're coming into 130R now. He is gaining. We know he'll be quicker through this left-hander than Wilk will be. There'll be a little bit of aero push. Not much, but a little bit. He's through very quickly indeed. A little bit wide though. I always cringe a bit when I see that because I know it's very slippy out there. And he's just that bit closer. But, okay, well, what that tells us is that if Cody's to win about 0.3 of a second coming out of a spoon curve, there is a chance he can get him coming into the chicane at the bottom there. Cody will be taking in that information too.
Yeah, he's going to need a lot of luck though, isn't it? 2 V8s underneath these cars, but difference in straight line speed is quite evident. You can see there's a good amount of straight line speed there though. In contrast, for Lukowski coming down into that first corner, not quite able to find his way through, but Wilk is looking a little bit raggedy through those corners. As you said, Jimmy, earlier on, this is where that Ford seems to struggle in these long sweeping corners. It just looks a bit, I don't want to say lazy, a bit lumbersome, but it does look a bit heavy compared to the ballerina point shoe of the Mercedes by comparison.
Yeah, you can almost imagine the Ford having just the 4-speed manual gearbox, couldn't you? Seeing it go around. It's one of those cars, but of course his Mustang's a lot better in the corners than they used to be a few years ago, especially in Group 4 trim as well. But still, you can see it's a heavy car. You know, there are differences in kind of weight distribution in these cars as well, and power delivery and aero and all those things. And of course, it's a lot easier to make a racing car out of a SLS than it is out of a Ford Mustang. So coming now down to the hairpin. This is a good overtaking spot if you're close enough, but the initial corner exit isn't quite there for the SLS to make the move.
I tell you what, I really want to see somebody send it down the inside at one of the Degners. That's such a brave part of the lap to try and find your way through. It's not traditional, but we have seen it before.
That's how you crash.
That's a one-way ticket to the barrier, isn't it, unfortunately? But yeah, Cody just keeping himself sensible there, not sending it down the inside of the Degner curves, and I'm not surprised at all. Just looking a little bit further down the order, looks like Barbara has called up to the back of Mahindajit for P7. Mahindajit in the Nissan, Barbara in the Mazda. A couple of tenths of a second separating those two drivers, and Wong just a couple of tenths of a second, respectively, further back of Barbara as well. So we'll keep an eye on that gap and see whether any positions do begin to change. We're expecting this, as we said, to be an out-and-out sprint to the checkered flag.
Cody's closer, as we said.
Much closer now, and he's in the slipstream. He's got the straight line speed. Has he got an opportunity to find his way through? Not quite through there. Can he get something? A good exit out, maybe out of 130R, and send something down the inside to the chicane. He's close. He sends it through. Side by side they go. Lukowski on the inside and into second position there for the Mercedes-Benz driver. Finally, he says, clear track in front of him. Now we can see what Lukowski can do.
I think for the first time in a GT broadcast, I was right. I'm shocked and stunned. He had the gap of about 0.3 of a second coming out of the spoon curve. I think the only thing, I thought he misjudged 130R. He carried the momentum in and just got there when Wilk was sort of braking and it slowed him down a bit, but even so, Cody carried more speed through them. Finally, he is released to go and try and chase down Emily Jones. 3-second gap though.
I'd like to reference your earlier point from a couple of laps ago. I don't think Cody will be able to find his way past, is what you said.
Well, let's just go my most recent one, all right? Let's just go my most recent one instead.
Goodness me. Well, Emily Jones, meanwhile, doing a great job. 2.7 seconds ahead of Lakowski now. Let's see what that gap is going to do. Last time around, just to give you an idea of the difference in lap times, Jones was a 2:09.3. Lakowski was a 2:09.7, but of course he was stuck behind Wilk for a good amount of that lap. Now he's in clear air. Now we can see whether that gap will decrease. Coming through in towards the hairpin. This is turn 10 into turn 11. That hairpin. It's such a favourite passing place for a few drivers. You remember, of course, watching Formula 1 a few years there back, Kamui Kobayashi, back in, I think, 2011 it was his favourite place to send it up the inside of a few drivers, and well, it might be a favourite of a few drivers later on in this race. Lap 7 out of 16 we're on, so we're coming towards the halfway stage, and now this is where the tyres will be getting a little bit more worn as well. So there's always tyre management to consider in these races, and especially in that front-wheel drive Audi, that's what Jones is going to be thinking about.
Yeah, we did say at the start of the race that Audi is pretty quick in Group 4 trim, but over these longer races it does suffer a lot with tyre wear. So the car would have been very nice to drive for the first few laps, but I can tell you now it's probably going to be starting going the other way. Here is this awesome livery on the Mazda.
Ricard Rydell.
Yeah, which is confusing me slightly. I love the livery, but why? Why is it, anyway, well, the old Mazda liveries weren't too hot back then, to be honest, but Wong looking at the outside of Babs here, almost touching the grass there. Very brave to try going around outside 130. Oh no, thinks better of it. He's going to try and tuck back in and get the run now coming down to the chicane, but Barbara manages to keep the car on the line. Backfire there as they shift down the gears into the last corner for this right-hander. Now, use the draft down the straight. This is where, if you have a good exit, you can maybe try and put something together into T1, but we're a little bit too far back on board now with Wong. See the speedometer on the right as we gain. We've got that slipstream. This is going to be a good chance here. Wong's got the slipstream, got the draft. Looks to the inside there. Really, Barbara not trying to defend whatsoever, but a little bit wide in the second part of the corner there. There might have been contact between the two of them. We didn't quite see it, but Barbara's going to try and come back at him now into the S's, but Wong's got the inside. Move made. Wong up into 7th place there in the Volvo/Mazda. And then behind them, looks like Healy's picked up a penalty.
Yeah, Connor Healy there in 9th position, having picked up a penalty in the Honda NSX. Presumably that was for a little bit of contact there going between those guys. But you can see, as we saw earlier on, a train of cars in the low half, the top 10, and Wilk goes wide into the Degners and loses out, runs off track, loses 3rd position, potentially set to lose 4th place here as well from Jonathan Stankowski. He's going to come back in division here as well, so he needs to be a bit careful about where he comes back through, and Stankowski gets himself ahead into the hairpin. Wilk now down into 5th place, so a simple mistake there into the Degner. Very easy to do so, and it's very unforgiving, that gravel.
Got a technical term for that. That's
Yeah.
chunder steer, that is.
Chunder steer.
He turned in, and the front wheels went, no, we ain't having that, mate, and he just went straight on. And we're starting to see the tyre wear. We're starting to see it a little bit now. Even these hard tyres, these hard racing tyres, they do start to melt after a while, especially when you're in a Mustang like that and putting all that weight on the front tyres. And Wilk, that's an unfortunate mistake for him. I mean, it would have been a bit of driver error too as well, but the thing is, this car is just not forgiving when you're on that edge of grip there. But he does have the draft now on Stankowski. He might be able to get the place back again on the back of that little Scirocco. 2 more different cars I cannot imagine as Wilk looks up the inside there. Try and go up the inside 130. Oh, bit hip and shoulder there. The bar. Talk about bars, man. He held him off the circuit, and Stankowski there, as a result, goes down into 5th place. Now, this is where I would think that might be a penalty, because there was a little bit of contact there, I think, but
forceful,
yeah,
I think it's fair to say.
Apparently not, as Wilk there makes his way back up into 4th place. I don't think he probably even noticed the contact there in that thing, did he? Like, what was that?
He's just looking around like, what was that? Oh, it's the Volkswagen in my rear view mirror. Dear, oh dear. The thing is, these tyres, as we come into the latter stages as well, I mean they're going to be offering, as much grip as
coming in. What's it going to be?
I'm trying to think of some kind of an analogy or something.
What's it going to be?
I was just trying to think of some kind of
dog on Lilo,
dog on a polished floor,
Yeah.
a classic one. Understeering like a shopping trolley, another one like a canal boat.
Oh man,
Turning circle, the moon of Saturn or something like that.
it's going to understeer like a car with bad tyres. There you go. that's how it's going to be. And Wilk, this is going to be, because I think he realistically, his best position in this race would have been third. So he can still get that. He's got a 1.2 seconds to lead in the Subaru in front. Gets through the first Stegner correctly this time. That gravel did its job, didn't it? He went off and just stopped.
Which is what gravel's supposed to do.
Yeah.
I have to say, I am a fan of gravel runoffs in the respect of tarmac runoffs. I know that they're safer in the real world, of course, the reason why you have tarmac runoffs, but I love gravel as well because it just doesn't, it punishes the driver. If you make a mistake, then you really do lose out. You don't just run wide and get back onto it.
Yeah, I tell you what as well, I had a spin in the Radical back at the start of the year.
Oh, you've never mentioned it. Did you drive a Radical, Jimmy?
And I'm glad there was gravel there. I tell you what, my wallet was glad there was gravel there too, my word.
Did it make your bottom go like a rabbit's nose?
Well, I didn't need seatbelts, I'll tell you that.
Change of race suit afterwards, perhaps. So, Wilk then in 4th position, coming out of the spoon curve onto the straight. Lap 9 out of 16 we are on here now. What can Wilk do? A recovery drive is in order for the Australian driver. And let's see whether he is going to be able to implement that recovery drive well here within this race. And, of course, further down the order, you can see the likes of Barbara here as well with Mahinderjit. Wong, rather, I should say, just in front. Mahinderjit very close behind. Through 130R we go. 2 Mazdas running very close to one another, so these cars are going to be identical in every way, shape or form, but for the livery, as you can see, and we're running very similar paces as a result of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are... I think we have... That is the only duplicate, I think, these 2 Mazdas. Otherwise, it's a...
There's 2 BMWs here as well.
Oh, there
Donald
is, yeah.
and McIver.
Good spot there. So, yeah, very diverse field as we used to see in this. In fact, the top 7 positions occupied by 7 different manufacturers. In the background there, GTR, best car on the field, of course, but with a penalty, unfortunately. So
no bias from you there, is there?
Zero bias, mate. I don't do that. I'm not into that. But yeah, at that 0.5 second penalty, that'll be track limits. There is the GTR. And I wouldn't really fancy around it, to be honest. A little bit, you feel the weight of the thing around here. You really do. Especially through the S's. It's a bit of a heavier car. Hasn't quite got that straight line speed it used to have under previous BOP either. So, but Mendes is doing a good job to keep these guys behind. Unfortunately for him, he's going to have no choice but to let these people pass once they get to the penalty zone. And that is just as you come into 130R. So, unfortunate for Mendes to pick up that penalty.
One thing to mention as well with the penalty zone is you don't just lose that half a second, you lose the time after that as well, don't you? You know, you might have a penalty for what seems like not a long time, but especially if you're caught with drivers like this, of course, you're not at the same speed as when you come back into vision, so there is time to lose. And you can see up the inside goes Matthew Allen then on Gopi Mahinderjit in the Alpha 4C. Side by side they run on corner exit. Cy Bishop fancying a bite at the cherry here as well in the Toyota 86. He runs now side by side with Allen, so from attacking to defending and losing out to the Kiwi we go as we come down through into the right-hander, and Bishop is now through into 10th place, so Matt Allen there trying to find his way through into 9th place is now somehow down into 11th.
That GTR's big, isn't it? Like when it's again like the Mustang compared to these little other cars, it's massive. But here's the penalty. So here's what we're talking about. 0.5 seconds is a click of the fingers, really. But then he has to get back up to speed again, and he's losing time all the way down here. Still losing time. Probably about a second or so in total, I think, is going to be the penalty after he gets back up to speed again. But that's one of that's the thing you've got to take into account here, and it serves as much as a deterrence than anything else, I think.
Well, Bishop now through into 9th place, Allen into 10th, Mahinderjit down into 11th. Meanwhile, out in front, Jones keeping that gap pretty stable. Here comes Wilk, though, on the attack once again against Andrew Lee. This is going to be Raikkonen versus Fisichella nearly into the first corner. Not able to find his way past. There is Wilk in the Ford against the Subaru, but 2 very large-looking cars. Big old heavy boats, and through into the S-Benz we go. Surely if Lee can just hold his line through there, that'll be enough to keep the Ford at bay for at least this first sector in the lap, but definitely looking very much on the attack here is Adam Wilk, so I wonder whether he's just saved his tyres a bit better than that WRX in the closing stage of this one, and that is why it is now coming to benefit him, perhaps.
Yeah, great defending by Lee into T1, really squeezed out Wilk as much as he was able to do.
Go on, Degner, go on.
No,
I thought he was going to do it.
Don't do it. I mean, that would have just been a crash, and Wilk knows it, that's why he dropped back in again. But you sort of do that to sort of just distract the guy in front, and then I hope he makes a mistake into there. And it goes a bit wide there. Will he ever go up into the hairpin here? No, not quite close enough. I say that. The pressure there of the Mustang. I think Lee was looking in his mirrors a bit too much going into the hairpin. Just goes wide, brakes a little bit too late, and Wilk slips up the inside up into 3rd place, and that'll probably be the end that we see of that battle.
Well, there we go then. So Adam Wilk now through into 3rd position. Succumbing under pressure, allowing Lee to make a mistake, finding his way through, and now the Ford is into the podium positions once again in this race. That's a very good recovery drive for him. Probably sat there wondering what might have been. I mean, given the fact that he's run off into the gravel and probably lost a good 5-6 seconds or so as a result of that off-track excursion and a handful of positions in the process, he'll be, I think, relatively pleased if this is his final finishing position in this race. Still 5 laps to go, though, or 4.5 there or thereabouts. So plenty of time for things to change. But good to see there for Wilk, making his way through. And clearly he's got good pace with that Mustang here.
Yeah, I mean, despite the issues earlier on, the guy's a good driver. We know Wilk has always been really, he's been with that Ford manufacturer for a very long time now. He knows all the cars very well, so even with that mistake, to be in third place is an impressive drive. He will now be giving the draft, though, to Lee. Now, here's where we see the difference in the straight line between the two cars. By now, Wilk was right up on the boot lid of Lee, and at the moment, Lee nowhere near. So Wilk will know that, having, okay, well, I'm good in the straight line then, so I've got to just make sure that I'm good coming out of the spoon curve. That's probably the only other overtaking spot that Impreza can hope to get by, and that'll be him done. This is what you're thinking when you're a driver. You're thinking, right, where am I going to have to defend? And he's probably thinking, well, nowhere, if I'm good.
Well, that's the idea, at least. Putting that into practice is not always quite so easy. Just by the way, a bit of a shout out to Jonathan Stankowski in the Volkswagen, running in P6. That's a great result for him. We've seen him competing in the Top 16 Superstars events over the course of 2020 and doing a really good job, just steadily making his progress up the field inside the top 10, pretty close there and thereabouts to the top 5. Not a bad result there for him. I think he'll be pretty pleased with that if it stays as it is. He's kind of in no man's land, all out on his own in P6. Nobody attacking him from behind, but nobody to attack in front there as well. If he just drives his own race, keeps his pace consistent, I think he'll have a bit of a smile on his face after this one.
Yeah, definitely. You can't be upset with that. I mean, if you get the best out of the car, I mean, of course, you're always going to finish higher than... unless you're finishing first, they're going to be upset with the position. But still, he's had a good speed out there in that little Scirocco that could. And... I guess, as I was saying, if you know you're getting the best out of the car, that's pretty much the most you can hope for, really. But still going strong. We still have a few laps to go in this race. Let's check in with our leader, Emily Jones. 2.7 seconds, 2.6 seconds ahead of Cody Nikolakowski. Last time out, lap times were pretty much identical. I hate to say it to Cody, but unless you're going to start taking chunks out of that lead, then he is not going to be catching. Emily has driven a perfect race so far.
I'm just racking my brains actually with Emily Jones, because I'm just having a look at the Manufacturer Series stats in total. That's including the Top 16 Superstars, but also the online season races as well. Out of the 30 races she's competed in, she's won 6 of them, had 18 top 5 finishes. But I wonder, has she won a Top 16 Superstars event from memory this year? I can't think if she has or not.
I don't think she's won the Superstars race. This will be her first Superstars win. I think we would have remembered that. So she'll be thinking about that, I imagine. That'll be in the back of her head. It always is when you're out there thinking, you've got a few laps to go. You think, oh man, I could maybe walk away with a win here. And saying that, she's just lost about 0.4 of a second to Cody. So maybe a little bit...
don't count your chickens before they've hatched.
Pressure may be starting to get to her a little bit. But she's not won it yet. Still 3 laps to go.
Yeah, exactly that, and we know how quickly Cody can sniff an opportunity and hunt those drivers down. I wonder whether those tyres are just getting past their best, because they must be very clapped out on that Audi now compared to the rear-wheel drive Mercedes-Benz in P2. Let's see what happens. Stand by your beds, because it could be set to change. We'll keep an eye out on the sector times and, crucially, the lap times here as well. There is Cody coming through into the Degners. Through into the second Degner as he goes under the bridge. This, of course, is where the track over the top of him at the moment comes in towards 130R. It's a figure of 8 layout, the only figure of 8 layout, I think, within the entirety of GT Sports, and indeed pretty much now I think the entirety of motorsport as well. It's a very unique configuration. It's actually used as a test track for Honda as well, to some extent.
Yeah, and unfortunately not doing too good for them here. It's the only Honda we have in the race is 13th, so maybe more testing scheduled, I guess, here. But I mean, Cody looks so smooth, doesn't it? When you're watching him drive, there's no drama. He's just nice and easy.
One turn of the steering wheel.
Yeah, I mean, he knows where he needs to be, and he's no doubt getting the most out of that SLS. But you see there that Emily Jones is just driving the car the shortest line possible at this point.
Well, you've been in this position, Jimmy. You're riding on board here with Cody Nikolakowski. Let's put you in Cody's shoes. You can see Emily Jones in front. How much of an incentive is it when you can see that driver just getting a little bit closer to you, incrementally though it may be, sort of lap after lap?
It's always easier to chase than it is to lead. And these guys have the mentality that, like, I will catch them. So there's no yes or no about it. You are, in your mind, you're saying, I will be there on the last lap, and And you're working out lap by lap how much time you have to take off again. Cody quicker, another 3 tenths of a second. Needs to be more than, needs to be about 7 tenths a second if he wants to be there on the last lap. So he'll know that too. Cody's a clever guy. He'll be working that out on the fly. It's tricky. You can see him, you can see him getting quicker, but then you make any little mistake and you get flustered. So it's a tough place to be even when you are chasing, but it'll be even tougher for Emily Jones seeing that gap come down.
Further down the order, Gopi Mahindra just got himself ahead of Cy Bishop coming down the start-finish straight. That's a battle for P9 between the Toyota and the Nissan. That's very close actually between those two, because it looks like the position is exchanging corner after corner. Let's keep an eye out. You can see them running side by side in towards the S-Bends. Who gets through first here? It's Cy Bishop, so presumably he'll be able to hold that through these S-Bends. But look at the train of cars following Matthew Simmons, Matthew Allen in there as well. So 4 cars squabbling for the lower half of the top 10. I mean, Matt Simmons, he'll be sat there kicking himself after this, down in 11th place after where he qualified on the front row.
Yeah, a lot of penalties in there, I think, for him. That was the main thing. Of course, now he's looking to try and get some of those places back and getting a little bit impatient maybe with Mahindra in front. But that's what it is. These guys are all racing so closely. It might not look like it on the when you're looking at the lead that Jones and Lukowski had, but the field is generally very close. You know, tenths of a second a lap separating each of the lap times here. So if you then suddenly give away 2-3 seconds, you're going to plummet down the field. That's what happened to Simmons. Bishop now definitely the cork in the bottle in this little group here, but Allen there, you get the impression that Alpha is just so slow in a straight line. Every time we see it, it can't get out of the corners quickly, it can't do anything on the top end. It's very, very quick in the corners, but just needs maybe a couple more horsepower.
The one standout result I remember from Alfa Romeo was with Danny Solis back in New York last year at Laguna Seca, where that car in Group 4 trim was very quick. Of course, balance of performance has changed since then, so that may be why it's not quite so quick at the moment. Meanwhile, Bishop and Mahindra, you can see going into the spoon curve, were very close to one another. Now coming down this straight, that's where things are going to get quite interesting. So everybody's got the advantage of the slipstream, of course, but for Cy Bishop. Now he's on the defensive, moves over to the inside. Mahindra's going to have to try and go the long way around the outside through 130R, not able to find his way through into there, maybe into the chicane. Mahindra can invent something. Here comes Allen on the inside of Simmons as well as Bishop defends from Mahindra. Side by side we go. Gopi's going to go the long way around the outside through the chicane. That's brilliant from the Nissan driver. He's through into 9th position. Allen, though, on the flip side, was not quite able to get ahead of the Porsche of Simmons.
Sent it, mate. That's what you've got to do. The sire was very, very nice there. Get him racing room. And Gopi goes up to 9th place for now. This is the thing, though, if you're Cy Bishop, you don't want to be letting him get away, because now you're in the clutch of the Matt Simmons, who's looking very, very feisty behind. That's what I'm talking about. Chucks it up the inside there, very late on the brakes, and now Cy Bishop goes down to 11th place. Can Matt hold it round the outside? He's going to be on the inside though for this right-hander. Cy goes out wide. Matt takes the place. Allen fancies his go as well. They're still side by side. I thought Matt was a keeper there. He'll definitely take it here though, around this long right-hand. There's not enough grip there to keep the car alongside Matt Simmons. Has to drop back in behind. But I tell you what, Cy really made Matt work for that one.
Feisty from Cy Bishop, we like that. Feisty from Matt Simmons as well. And now Bishop, well, from a potential top 10 finish, is looking like he might be falling down to 12th position before too long here, because Simmons is really beginning to close up. Speaking of closing up, that gap between Jones and Lukowski has come down. Now 1.8 seconds here on this penultimate lap, so it's closer than it's been over the course of this race. Not close enough at the moment for Lukowski to think about a move, but encouraging signs for him if that gap will come down. There's a lap and a half to go here. It's still all to play for. If those tyres are at the end of their life, if they've fallen off that cliff for Jones, it could be the golden opportunity here for Lukowski.
Yeah, he'll have a draft soon as well, which will just accelerate that gap coming down. But we'll keep an eye on it. Here it is. That is the gap. You can see it there. 1.6 seconds or so as Cody comes round 130R for the penultimate time, coming down to the chicane. What can he do on the brakes? You know that Audi is good on the brakes, usually, of course. Those front tyres, though, will be starting to go the other way, or firmly gone the other way by now, I should say. 1.4 seconds. Cody's gaining a lot of time through there. He'll be starting to just sniffing a little bit of a draft coming down the straight as well. So it's all going to come down to this. Meanwhile, Mahindra and Simmons still going at it. Simmons trying to recover after a few penalties earlier on. He's going to look around the outside of the chicane. Gopi covers him off on the inside. Cy Bishop fancies a run on the way through on the inside. Maybe a little bit of contact. No, I didn't quite see that. Bit of contact there, an accident between Simmons and Bishop as we come now down the straight, and Cy picks up a penalty.
And another penalty there for Connor Healy in the background there as well. So 2 drivers picking up penalties in quick succession. Healy just joining this party and about to leave it very soon as well with that penalty as a result of that. So Cy Bishop, another penalty-strewn race for him, wrecking his chances of a stronger finish than he would have had otherwise. Contact as well, I believe, between Mahindra and Simmons into that first corner. Simmons loses out there, but Bishop's going to go the long way around the outside. More penalties being given there as Simmons has it. So it's penalty central here in the lower half of the top 10.
Well, Alan will be happy with that. These guys won't be. I'll tell you that now.
Like a Cheshire Cat, he'll be.
Yeah, definitely. But Mahindra now sort of given a get out of jail free card there. He should be able to finish 9th as long as he can keep ahead of these fellas in front. Looks like that maybe Lukowski pushed a little bit too hard there. The start is now 1.8 seconds. I think Emily maybe getting a little bit of a second wind on the last half of this last lap. This could be it for her. This could be her maiden Superstars win. Only half a lap for her to go.
So then through into the second Degner, and out of it now we go in towards the hairpin. It's all to play for here between these drivers. Mahindra out wide, but of course all these drivers behind have got penalties, so he doesn't need to worry too much about that. The man he needs to think about is the guy who's right at the back of this train, of Matthew Allen in the Alfa Romeo. Oh, look at this though. Healy on the inside, Bishop on the outside. Mahindra is the Nissan in the sandwich of the Japanese cars then. So this is very exciting stuff between them. It's all going to be null and void though as we come in towards the spoon curve. Into the spoon curve we go, still side by side with Healy versus Mahindra then into the left-hander. Healy's on the inside, Mahindra down into 11th position, Simmons right up the back bumper of him, and this is where the penalties are going to be served here. But we need to keep an eye on the race leader because Emily Jones is coming through the final corner, and she is going to make history by becoming the first female winner of a Top 16 Superstars event. She takes her maiden win in the Oceania region for the Manufacturers Series. Lukowski comes home in second, Wilk makes it. 3 different manufacturers on the podium in 3rd position as McDonald comes home 4th, Lee in P5, and further down the order we're all keeping an eye on the lower half of the top 10 as these drivers have served their penalties into the wall there for Jonathan Wong as he comes over the timing line, followed by Barbara and Mahindra. There is Mahindra then ahead of Matthew Allen. All 3 drivers who served their penalties losing out in the final stages as they come over the timing line. Well, an exciting end to the race, and what can we say about Emily Jones? It looked like she was coming under a bit more pressure from Lukowski in the closing stages of that race, but she kept her calm, she held her nerve, she takes the win.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time, I think, for Emily. She's been getting quicker and quicker. A few mistakes in the last few races, but iron those out, and this is what happens. The speed is definitely there, and someone that can challenge Cody is, well, that's that's a big tick in my box there. But you can see there, Cody's still a bit quicker, best lap, but didn't matter in the end.
No, it's where you finish on the road. You can see the other drivers further down the order. Oh dear. Bishop, Healy and Simmons, they're going to be kicking themselves after that race. McIver, Boone and Tame complete our 16 finishers in round 28 of the Top 16 Superstars event for the Manufacturer Series in the Oceania region. What a race. So next weekend is the end of stage 3 of our online season. It's round 30 of the Top 16 Superstars. Please be sure to join us for the conclusion on the Oceania region. From Jimmy Broadbent and from myself, Tom Brooks, thank you very much indeed for watching. We'll see you next time.